The year was 1344, in eastern China. A 17-year-old boy was kneeling beside the bodies of his parents, crying so hard that he could barely breathe. His father had just died. A few days later, his elder brother died. Then his mother died as well. The family had no coffins and no land of their own. The boy had to beg someone for a small piece of wasteland so that his parents could be buried. No one could have imagined that 24 years later, would wear the robes of an emperor, sit inside a palace in Nanjing, and establish a dynasty that would rule China for nearly 300 years. His name was Zhu Chongba. Later, the world would remember him by another name, Zhu Yuanzhang, founder of the Ming Dynasty. Zhu Chongba was born in what is now Fengyang, in Anhui province. At the time, China was still ruled by the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. War, heavy taxes, and repeated natural disasters had pushed the lives of countless ordinary people toward collapse. The Zhu family was only one poor farming family among many. Zhu Chongba never attended school as a child. He worked as a cattle herder for a landlord and often walked barefoot along the narrow paths between fields. Hunger was not an occasional hardship. It was part of his childhood. But among the other poor children, Zhu Chongba was always the one who seemed most like a leader. They used broken straw hats as crowns and bamboo sticks as weapons, pretending to command armies on the grassy hills. Whenever Zhu Chongba waved his hand, the others charged down the slope behind him. It was only a children's game. No one knew that some of those children would one day follow him into real battles. In 1344, a devastating drought struck the Huai River region. Crops withered. Locusts devoured what little green remained. Then disease entered the villages. In less than half a month, Zhu Chongba lost his parents and his elder brother. A neighbor named Lu Jizu gave the Zhu family a small piece of barren land. Zhu Chongba and his second brother wrapped their relatives' bodies in worn straw mats. They twisted wild grass into ropes and carried them toward a hillside. The ground was hard. They had no proper tools, so they could only dig a little at a time. When the final layer of earth covered his parents' bodies, Zhu Chongba had nothing left. To survive, he entered the nearby Hongwu temple and became a novice monk at the very bottom of the order. Every day, he carried water, chopped wood, cooked meals, and swept the halls. In winter, the well water felt like ice, and his fingers often cracked and bled from the cold. But the temple had little food of its own. After only 50 days, the monks were sent away to find their own means of survival. Zhu Chongba left the temple with a wooden begging bowl and a broken umbrella. He began begging from village to village. For the next 3 years, he wandered through the countryside of Anhui and Hunan. Sometimes, someone gave him a bowl of hot porridge. More often, he was met by a closing door and a barking dog. At night, he slept inside abandoned temples, beneath bridges, or under trees. In winter, he curled into a ball and listened to wolves howling in the distance. Blisters split open beneath his feet, but the next morning, he still had to keep walking. Yet it was during these years of wandering that he saw the country for the first time. He watched officials continue collecting taxes during famine. He watched farmers abandon their homes just to stay alive. He discovered that the powerful men who seemed impossible to challenge could become just as helpless when order collapsed. He also remembered the locations of roads, rivers, mountain passes, and villages. Zhu Chongba could not have known it then, but those memories would one day become his military map. 3 years later, he returned to Hongwu Temple. Compared with the boy who had left, he was quieter now, and far more watchful. Then, one night in 1352, he received a letter from his childhood friend Tang He. Tang He had joined the Red Turban army led by Guizixing. In the letter, he invited Zhu Chongba to leave the temple and join the rebellion against the Yuan dynasty. Joining the Red Turbans meant treason. If the rebellion failed, death would be waiting for him. That night, Zhu Chongba removed his monk's robe and left Hongwu temple carrying only a wooden staff. He had no army, no money, and no powerful family name. All he possessed was an instinct that suffering had trained into him. Whatever happened, he had to survive. When Zhu Chongba reached the gates of Haozhou, the guards suspected that he was an enemy spy and immediately tied him up. He was taken before Guizixing, the commander of the local Red Turban forces. Gua saw a young man in torn and dirty clothes. Yet with blades surrounding him, the young man neither begged nor showed fear. Gua asked, "Why have you come here?" Zhu Chongba answered, "I came to join the army, and to stay alive." That was how he became an ordinary soldier. Zhu Chongba was brave in battle, but he was more than a man who knew how to charge forward. After each battle, while other soldiers fought over captured wealth, he studied the terrain, cleaned his weapons, and remembered the reasons behind every defeat. When he received rewards, he often shared them with the soldiers around him. Before long, more and more men were willing to follow him. Guo Zixing also began to value the young soldier. Eventually, he gave Zhu Chongba his adopted daughter, Lady Ma, in marriage. There was no magnificent palace for their wedding. There was only a simple military tent and a few tables of plain food. But Lady Ma would become the most important person in Zhu Yuanzhang's life. As Zhu Chongba's reputation grew, so did the jealousy within Guo Zixing's family. At one point, Guo became suspicious of him, locked him away, and denied him food. Lady Ma secretly took a flatbread that had just come out of the kitchen. To hide it from the guards, she placed the hot bread beneath her clothes and carried it to the room where Zhu Chongba was being held. By the time she took it out, the bread had grown cold, but the skin beneath it had blistered from the heat. Zhu Chongba stared at the bread, still warm from her body, and remained silent for a long time. He had already lost his parents. He had lost his home. Again and again, the world had pushed him away. Lady Ma was the first person who refused to leave him when his life was in danger. No matter how much power he later gained, Zhu Chongba never forgot that piece of bread. The Red Turban leaders in Haozhou continued fighting among themselves. Zhu Chongba understood that if he stayed, he would remain only a commander beneath someone else. So he returned to his home region and gathered old friends such as Tang He and Su De. Later, these early followers would become known as the 24 generals of Huaishi. Most came from poverty. They had no powerful families and no formal military education. Zhu Chongba told them, "If this world refuses to let us live, then we will fight our own way through it." From that moment, he was no longer a fugitive struggling only to survive. He began to think about changing his fate. And he began to think about taking the country itself. Zhu Chongba gave himself a new name, Zhu Yuanzhang. The wandering monk who had begged in the streets never truly disappeared. From that moment on, he was simply hidden beneath a commander's armor. China had already been torn apart by war. The Yuan dynasty still controlled the north. To Zhu Yuanzhang's west stood Chen Yuliang, who commanded a powerful navy. To the east stood Zhang Shicheng, ruler of the wealthy lands around the lower Yangtze River. Zhu Yuanzhang was trapped between several stronger powers. He did not command the largest army, and he was not the richest of the rival leaders. But he was more patient than most of them. In 1356, Zhu Yuanzhang captured Jiqing, the city known today as Nanjing. The city stood beside the Yangtze River. It had strong walls and controlled important routes between northern and southern China. Zhu turned it into the center of his growing power. When his army entered Nanjing, he did not allow the soldiers to loot the city. Anyone who harmed civilians or stole their property would be severely punished. Zhu Yuanzhang had already learned that capturing a city was not difficult. The real challenge was convincing its people to accept a new ruler. He began inviting educated men into his government to help manage taxes, grain supplies, and local administration. One of them, an elderly scholar named Xu Sheng, gave him 9 Chinese characters that became his guiding strategy. Build high walls. Store grain. Delay becoming king. The meaning was simple: strengthen the defenses, build a secure food supply, and do not rush to declare yourself the ruler of the realm. Zhu Yuanzhang accepted the advice. While other rebel leaders competed to crown themselves kings and emperors, Zhu remained in Nanjing. He strengthened its defenses and expanded military farming so that his army could produce a stable supply of food. He did not rush to reveal the full size of his ambition. He simply waited for his enemies to make the first mistake. Chen Yuliang soon became the greatest threat. Chen commanded an enormous army and a fleet of giant warships. Some of his vessels rose several decks above the water. From a distance, they looked like floating fortresses. In 1363, Chen Yuliang attacked the city of Hongdu. Zhu Yuanzhang's nephew, Zhu Yuanzhang, defended the city with a much smaller force and held out for 85 days. Those 85 days gave Zhu Yuanzhang time to gather his army. Then the two fleets met on Lake Poyang. Zhu stood aboard one of his smaller ships and looked toward Chen Yuliang's massive vessels. Beside them, his own fleet seemed dangerously weak. When the battle began, Chen's towering ships hurled stones and incendiary weapons down from above. Zhu Yuanzhang's fleet suffered heavy losses. If he continued attacking from the front, he could lose everything. On the third day, the wind over the lake changed direction. Zhu Yuanzhang immediately ordered his men to prepare fire ships. Dozens of small boats were filled with flammable materials, set on fire, and sent racing with the wind toward Chen Yuliang's fleet. Flames spread quickly across the giant ships. Smoke covered the sky. The enormous vessels struggled to turn, collided with one another, and threw the entire fleet into chaos. The fighting continued for a long time. During the confusion, Chen Yuliang was struck by an arrow and killed. His army began to collapse. Zhu Yuanzhang had won the most important battle of his life. He had defeated more than Chen Yuliang. He had proved that a man who once begged in the streets could overcome the most powerful army in the country. With the threat in the west destroyed, Zhu turned toward Zhang Shiqing in the east. Zhang had once been a salt smuggler. He controlled the wealthy city of Suzhou and much of the prosperous lower Yangtze region, but unlike Zhu Yuanzhang, he had little desire to unify the entire country. Zhu's army surrounded Suzhou for nearly 10 months. The city's food supply slowly disappeared. Eventually, the gates were broken, and Zhang Shiqing was captured. Now, no one in the Yangtze River region could stop Zhu Yuanzhang. In January 1368, snow fell over Nanjing. At the age of 40, Zhu Yuanzhang put on the ceremonial robes of an emperor and climbed the steps of a great altar. Civil and military officials knelt below him. He announced the birth of a new dynasty. Its name was Ming, and his reign would be called Hongwu. 24 years earlier, he had knelt beside his parents' bodies and begged someone for a piece of land in which to bury them. Now the land beneath his feet had become an empire. But the Yuan dynasty still controlled northern China. Zhu ordered Su De and Chang Yuchen to lead a great army north. Ming forces captured Shandong and Hunan before advancing toward the Yuan capital of Dadu, the city now known as Beijing. The Yuan Emperor fled north into the grasslands. The Ming army entered Dadu, ending Yuan rule over the heartland of China. Zhu Yuanzhang had finally transformed himself from a regional rebel commander into the new emperor of China. He had succeeded through more than courage. Hunger had taught him to value grain. Wandering had taught him the landscape. Poverty had taught him what ordinary people needed. And a life lived close to death had taught him to control everything he could. These qualities had saved him again and again. But when there was no longer a stronger enemy outside his walls, he still could not stop watching for danger. His attention began to turn toward the people closest to him. The man who had built his power with 24 poor companions would slowly learn to trust no one at all. After becoming emperor, Zhu Yuanzhang never forgot hunger. He encouraged farmers to reclaim abandoned land, repaired irrigation systems, reduced taxes in some regions, and expanded military farming so that soldiers could produce their own food. He wanted ordinary people to return to their fields, eat, and rebuild their lives after years of war. His own lifestyle remained relatively simple. The palace was not lavishly decorated, and his meals were plain. According to one story, a palace servant once brought him an expensive bowl of bird's nest soup. After asking how much it cost, Zhu pushed it away. He said that a single bowl could support an ordinary family for a long time. The lamps inside the palace were lit early each morning. Zhu personally read enormous numbers of official reports and rarely allowed others to make final decisions for him. This looked like extraordinary diligence. But there was another reason behind it. He did not believe power could be safely placed in anyone else's hands. Zhu Yuanzhang especially hated corrupt officials. He remembered how officials had continued collecting taxes while people starved. He believed the Yuan dynasty had not fallen only because of war. It had also fallen because corrupt officials had drained the life from the people. So he used exceptionally severe punishments. One of the most famous stories from the Hongwu era claimed that officials who stole beyond a certain amount could be executed and even subjected to a punishment known as skinning and stuffing with straw. Their skins were filled with straw and displayed inside government offices as warnings to whoever took their positions next. Some officials said farewell to their families before leaving for court each morning because they did not know whether they would return that night. Zhu Yuanzhang hoped that fear could destroy corruption. But fear did not remain inside the bureaucracy. It also began to rule the emperor himself. Zhu became increasingly suspicious that the generals and officials who had helped him win the empire might threaten his throne. These men had armies, reputations, and followers of their own. Once, they had been the people Zhu needed most. Now they became the people he feared most. After the Hu Weiyong case, large numbers of officials and military leaders were implicated. Zhu abolished the office of chancellor and pulled even more power directly into his own hands. Later, Li Shanchang and other founding officials were also caught in the purges. More and more of the men who had helped build the Ming Dynasty disappeared from the court. The men who had risen beside him from hunger and mud vanished one after another. Zhu Yuanzhang believed he was protecting the Ming Dynasty. He feared that after his death, his successor would be unable to control these battle-hardened generals. So while he was still alive, he decided to remove every possible threat in advance. Yet each death failed to make him feel safer. Instead, he became more isolated, and more convinced that the next betrayal was already close. Of all the people around him, only Empress Ma could still calm him. She had never abandoned the simplicity of their early years. When Zhu became furious, she urged him to think again. When he prepared to order another death, she reminded him not to let anger replace judgment. Everyone else saw the Hongwu Emperor. Empress Ma still saw Zhu Chongba, the starving man once locked inside a dark room. In 1382, Empress Ma became seriously ill. Zhu put aside his work and remained beside her bed. He fed her medicine himself and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Empress Ma knew that once she was gone, few people in the world would be able to restrain him. She held his hand and asked him to listen to wise officials after her death, and to kill fewer people. That night, Empress Ma's hand slipped from his. Zhu sat silently beside the bed and did not move for a long time. Years earlier, Lady Ma had hidden a hot piece of bread beneath her clothes, passed through the guards, and saved Zhu Chongba from starvation. Now he possessed an entire empire, yet he could not save the woman in front of him. According to legend, heavy rain fell over Nanjing that night. Zhu walked alone into the palace courtyard and wept like a child who had lost his home once again. After Empress Ma's death, Zhu placed even greater hope in his eldest son, Zhu Biao. Zhu Biao had been named crown prince when the Ming Dynasty was founded. He was gentle, deeply educated in Confucian thought, and very different from his father. Zhu Yuanzhang believed that he could use force to end the age of chaos, and then Zhu Biao could use compassion to preserve the country. He was willing to become the father everyone feared, as long as his son could one day become an emperor the people loved. But fate broke his plan again. In 1392, Zhu Biao returned to Nanjing after a journey to Xi'an. He fell ill and soon died. Zhu Yuanzhang stood beside his son's bed and watched the heir he had trained for decades stop breathing. Once again, he had lost someone he loved most. First his parents. Then his wife. Now his son. He possessed everything under heaven, yet he could not keep a single person he loved from leaving him. After Zhu Biao's death, Zhu Yuanzhang did not choose one of his other adult sons to inherit the throne. Instead, he chose Zhu Biao's young son, Zhu Yunwen. The imperial grandson was gentle and inexperienced in war. Zhu feared that the boy would be unable to control the remaining generals and officials. So once again, the emperor raised the blade. In 1393, the Lan Yu case began. Large numbers of generals, officials, and family members were implicated. Afterward, other founding commanders, including Fu Yud, were killed or driven toward death. Zhu Yuanzhang became like a gardener who cut down an entire forest to protect a young plant. He believed the plant would be safe once every tall tree had been removed. But he failed to understand that when the storm finally came, the young plant would be even more vulnerable without the forest around it. The greatest danger did not come only from the old generals. It also came from Zhu Yuanzhang's own sons. One of them, Zhu Di, the Prince of Yan, commanded armies in the north. He had experience, soldiers, and ambition. Zhu Yuanzhang removed many powerful generals to protect his grandson, but he could not remove the struggle for power inside his own family. After his death, that mistake would push the Ming Dynasty into another war. In 1398, the smell of medicinal herbs filled the imperial palace in Nanjing. Zhu Yuanzhang was now too sick to rise from his bed. The child who had once walked barefoot through the fields, the monk who had wandered with a begging bowl, and the commander who had sent fire ships across Lake Poyang was now only an old man approaching the end of his life. As his mind faded, he seemed to return to the village of his childhood. He saw the yellow fields and the broken walls of his family's home. He thought he could hear his mother in the distance, calling him by his childhood name. "Chongba, come home. It is time to eat." He reached out his hand, but there was nothing to hold. In the 31st year of the Hongwu reign, Zhu Yuanzhang died in Nanjing. By his order, the sons stationed outside the capital were forbidden to return for the funeral. He feared that the movement of their armies might throw the empire into chaos. Even in the final moment of his life, he was still preparing for a possible betrayal. Later, a story spread through Nanjing that on the day Zhu Yuanzhang was buried, all 13 gates of the city opened at the same time. 13 nearly identical funeral processions left in different directions. No one knew which procession carried the emperor's real coffin. Perhaps it was meant to prevent grave robbery. Perhaps it was only a legend created by later generations. But it suited Zhu Yuanzhang's life perfectly. The emperor who trusted no one left the world with one final deception. In the end, he was buried at the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum, beneath Purple Mountain in Nanjing, beside Empress Ma. Zhu Yuanzhang's life began with hunger, and fear followed him through all of it. Hunger taught him to endure more than other men. Fear taught him to see danger before anyone else. Those instincts carried him from the lowest level of society to the imperial throne. But even after he possessed the entire country, those instincts did not disappear. He built higher walls, stored more grain, gathered more power, and killed more of the people he suspected. He defeated famine. He defeated Qin Yuliang, Zhang Shiqing, and the Yuan Dynasty. Yet he never defeated the frightened boy inside him, the boy who feared losing everything again. He spent half his life winning the empire, and the other half defending himself from it. Perhaps, until the very end, the person truly sitting on the throne was still Zhu Chongba, the homeless boy kneeling beside the bodies of his parents.